Today is March 3rd, 2025, and welcome to the 430th episode of the Videogames podcast. Here on this show, I talk about any game at all, including new stuff, old stuff, and anything in between. My name is Brad Galloway, and I'm the one-man host of this show. I'm also the editor of GameCritics.com, a website that uses the full range of review scores from 0 to 10, while also offering full accessibility information on every review that we publish. Hello! Thank you for joining me today of all days. This day? Yes, absolutely this day. Thank you again. As per usual, going to kick things off with housekeeping, where I discuss tidbits, news items, industry happenings, basically anything randomly game adjacent that has caught my eye in the last 7 days. Kicking things off at the top of the show here, I want to give a shout out to Andy Robertson over in the UK and his current Kickstarter for Ludocene. Andy's been around for like a billion years. He is doing great work in all sorts of stuff, been writing forever, but mostly focusing on games and family. He's got the family gaming database that he has created, which is pretty awesome. And he's got this new thing getting off the ground that he is trying to fund. We actually have a guest spot. Yes, that's right. I actually have Andy here on the show. Not live. We recorded it earlier because of like the UK time differences, so forth and so on. But I did talk to Andy, and we've got the recording right here, right now for you. And just before we get this clip started, want to let you know that the Ludocene Kickstarter, as of recording today, has only 9 days left, and they are 2/3 of the way there. So check this out, see what Andy has to say. It was a real fun conversation. Andy's a great guy. And then if you feel like it, maybe kick him a couple bucks. Get this Ludocene thing off the ground, all right? All right, here we go. Andy and me, take it away. All right, with me today is Andy Robertson from the UK, traveling all the way across these wires, across the ocean to talk to me now. How are you doing, Andy?
I'm good. How's it going?
Oh, it's going fine. It's going fine. I'm so pleased you were able to be on the podcast today. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, it's great. I don't think I've been on before. I feel like I have because I listened to pretty much every episode right to the end. When you say, if you're still here, I'm like, yes, I'm still here.
I am honored, sir. I am honored. Thank you so much for being a listener and for going all the way to the end. I know very few people do that, so it's a treat to have you here. Thank you so much. Well, Andy, today is not just any day. Today is kind of a special day, and you've had a series of special days lately because you have launched a Kickstarter, which we're going to talk all about in a second. But before we do that, I know who you are. I know probably if anybody's been in gaming for any length of time, they probably know who you are. But I like to be thorough on this podcast. So just for the people who may not know who you are, would you mind giving us a little bit of a capsule tell us the story of Andy here?
Yep. Yes. So I have been a journalist, probably not quite as long as you. I don't know, about 20 years, I think.
Oh, that's a good long time, though. Yeah.
Yep. And it was when the Wii came out. That's when I started. And I was on that kind of beat of families and video games. Everybody rushed to cover when the Wii was out.
Oh, yeah.
And I kind of stayed. I kind of stayed and kept doing it. And I'm still doing kind of that is largely my kind of home base.
They couldn't get rid of you. You just stuck.
Yeah, exactly. So, and over the time, it's been a privilege to write for lots of sites. One of the first places I wrote for was Wired. And I'm like, oh, I'd love to write for Wired now. I didn't quite realise what a bigger deal it was. I was part of kind of their Geek Dad bloggers, and that's kind of where my handle kind of came from.
Oh, okay. I actually never put that together. No, gosh, I feel kind of silly for not realizing that. Okay.
But that was nice, and so over the time, there's no real money in journalism. So if you're to survive as a journalist for 20 years, you find other ways of paying the bills. Either it becomes kind of you find a day job. I've been kind of fortunate in finding kind of side hustles that have turned into ways of covering things. YouTube was that for sort of from 2012.
Well, there's one other way, Andy. One other way to keep your head up in this competitive field. You're entirely right. There's no money in it, but you didn't mention the most important and easiest way to survive is marry somebody who's got a good job.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, be a kept man. That's the way to do it.
Yes, that is the. I can speak from experience. That is the best way to do it, sir.
Yeah. I'm all for that. Yeah. So just over the years, I've found various kind of things that I've made kind of work, and the kind of pattern has been like find something I like doing. Hopefully, other people like it too, and keep doing it long enough so eventually it kind of generates an income, and that's kind of the YouTube pattern. You have to really grind away. And that's the Kickstarter, which we'll talk about. It reminds me of being in this kind of YouTube mode of having a video to push and just to do everything to get it out there. But so that's kind of where I've kind of covered things. And it's kind of like the family stuff's nice because you talk about people. You're often talking about a family setting and what's it like when this person plays a game. So it's always been that kind of intersection of like games in the lives of real people and getting away from this game's good, this game's bad. I like what you say. I don't want to yuck your yum. And sort of saying actually it's about discovery and finding a game that matches your taste, which is why podcasts are such a great part of that.
For sure. Well, let's get to that in a second, but hold on. I'll put a pin in that for just a moment, sir, because I'm thrilled to have you here. It's such a treat to talk to you. So let's talk just a little bit more about like you personally for your family. So how many kids do you have? Like 17, 18? What do you got?
Well, they are 17 years old to the youngest. So we've got 3 kids. The youngest is 17. He's doing his A-levels. And my middle son is 20, I think. That's how old they are. I'm losing track of their ages. He's at university doing sports science, a nice little kind of, in the UK this is really unusual. I think it's not as unusual elsewhere, to say in the US, but he got a scholarship to play Rocket League for a university.
Oh, what? A Rocket League scholarship? Holy shit, he must be amazing.
So yeah, he's sort of a bubble player, he would describe it as. So he's often playing in matches where other pros are. He's not a pro player, and he kind of doesn't, he's more on the kind of the sports science and kind of psychology and training and all that kind of stuff. And so, but it's really nice for him and for us because he gets a chunk of money off of his university fees. And also he's got a ready-made little bunch of friends when he started. So that was him.
Right
and
on.
My daughter is 21 and she's doing musical theatre in central London. And again, that's a hard thing to get into, but she's working hard. And I've been impressed with her. Yeah, so she's doing well too. And not so many at home now. So we're just our youngest.
Wow.
Doing A-levels, he's at home. So there's just the 3 of them. So the 3 of them in total.
You're going to be able to reclaim those bedrooms and make them into like a home office and, a gamer den or whatever you need to get going there. But let me ask you, man. So I guess over the history of raising these 3 kids, like what games were most popular with you? Like, did you get in there and just get them play multiplayer with them? Did your wife play? Like, is she a gamer at all? Like what did it look like when you were coming up? Because you've been in the family like lane for like a long time. And that's kind of how I know you in my head. Whenever I think of Andy Robertson, I think of like family gaming database and just like parental recommendations. That's just the space you occupy in my head, rent free, by the way. And so like, what was it like in your home? Like, what were the popular games? I mean, Rocket League, obviously your kid must have loved that one, but what else? What was big?
Yeah, so before that, our kids were of an age to enjoy Skylanders.
Oh my God, yes, okay.
And I had a bit of an odd, like I like it, but I'm aware that I was kind of sent tons of these toys for free, and they're pretty expensive. So we always were like, this isn't normal, is it? But I think it's really good. And actually, I got a Retroid Pocket, like handheld, where you can play old games. And I was going back and playing the old Skylanders games and actually quite enjoying them. I was like, there's some proper craft back in those games. It was easy to be a bit sort of sniffy about them at the time, I think, because they were for kids and there was a big sell part of it as well.
Oh,
but
yeah.
We really enjoyed it. And the kids would take the toys around with them in the bath and that kind of thing. Like I remember I bought back some of these kind of exclusive ones that they give out at E3, and they usually end up on eBay for lots of money, but I would just give them to my kids. And I'd then share pictures on Twitter at the time, and people would be like, "Can't believe you've unboxed that, that's worth so much money," and I'd be like, "That's not the half of it." They would like take them in the bath and they'd be all like, the wings are ripped off and like
oh no,
the paint's coming off. So, but
those are collector's items, Andy. Oh my God.
So it's that Toy Story moment. I mean, yeah, but I know, but your was it Masters of the Universe collection? Probably. Is on that adult collector end of things. So,
absolutely.
But for kids, it's nice just to give them stuff and see what they do with it, and that's always been fun. Towerfall was another game we've liked when they were a little bit older.
Oh, that was a fun one, yeah.
If you played that, and it's because it's really competitive. My son, who plays Rocket League, was always like that, because you can do this dash. You're getting shot with arrows.
Oh yes.
If you dash at the right time, you can grab the arrow in the air, mid-air, and then fire it back. So we was like, Tom, how'd you do that? It's not fair. Your reactions are too quick.
That was popular at our house for a while, but we had to stop because it got too competitive. And
it is, yeah.
Yeah, after a while, we just had to be like, we need to do cooperative only because it just got ugly, when like feelings were hurt and people would lose. And I tend to stay away from the competitive side. So I'm curious, so what about your wife? Is she a gamer at all, or what does she think about all this?
Yeah, she plays games. She has sort of deep cuts to old games that she really likes. Loco Roco is a game
Okay, all right.
she played on the, I think it was PSP.
PSP? Yeah,
It wasn't
PSP.
Vita, was it? And all I have to do is to bring up that music, and she goes all kind of like doe-eyed and is like, "Oh, it's my game." So she doesn't play every day, but if we're playing, she'll join us, and she has those, like I say, kind of deep cuts. When our daughter was first born, we were playing Wind Waker, and the kind of little snuffly noises that Link makes as you explore.
Oh, yeah.
It's associated with the noises of my newborn baby daughter in our heads. And again, that was kind of a game we enjoyed together. Yeah, and then more recently, she'll jump in and enjoy games. And actually, one of the things I do is to run a database for parents to look games up on.
Yep.
Which is a small business, and actually she works part-time for the business checking games. So actually, although she doesn't play loads, she's got a really deep knowledge of what games are what, and often the kids are talking about a game, and she'll be like, oh, what's that? Is that this game here? And they'll be like, oh, how did you know that? So yeah, her kind of path into games continues as I've kind of inveigled her in this business.
Wow,
it's a bit like the Waltons. All the family are involved.
That's fantastic. You've got like an entire family affair going on. That's amazing. Oh man. Well, thank you very much for that personal look into your private life. I appreciate that. But let's get right to why we're here today. So you have recently gotten into the Kickstarter arena, and you have gotten Ludocene off the ground. It's currently in funding on Kickstarter. That campaign is live. I have contributed, full disclosure to everybody who's listening. I got no conflict of interest here. I am definitely a supporter of Andy and his works over the years. So I have chipped in to this thing, and hopefully if you're listening, you will too. But Andy, for people who don't know about Ludocene, why don't you give us a lowdown, man?
Yeah, so it starts from this problem that we've got of game discovery, and as you say, as in the press, our inboxes are completely hammered. But for anybody, there's literally thousands of games being released every month, and we do. Some great games float to the top sometimes, but loads of great games don't get that chance to float to the top, particularly if they've got a small budget and don't have a PR team, or just don't get lucky. And so the idea was, what would it look like to have an app that was kind of quite playful and fun, but was an interesting way of surfacing games that might not otherwise sort of rise to the top of that pile. I have this background set of data that we created for the database that we can draw on. There's all games, and when we added those games, we did this thing of saying, if you like this game, here's 5 others that you'll also like.
Yep.
And that was over the last 5 years. We had this rich data set that we knew was really good at finding games for people, but was kind of locked away in that family space, and people would bounce off it because it looks like it's just for families, although it wasn't just family games. And so this Kickstarter for this app that we call Ludocene, Ludocene, is a way. It's like a dating app basically. So you are presented a stream of cards, and you say yes or no to the cards by swiping. And from the moment you make a decision, the app pays attention and uses that information then to kind of home in on what else you might like. Then the special sauce on top of that is we've worked with loads of experts like journalists, streamers, podcasters, kind of anybody, anybody who's got great taste in games, and you can pick those people in as cards, and so you pick your expert, and then their tastes influence what's being suggested in the app. So it gets away from it being us sort of saying this is good, this is bad, or these are the ones we're featuring, to letting the person using it to pick the people that whose taste they know.
Interesting.
So if you were on it, they could pick you, and then it would lean into, I don't know, what was it, tactics games and roguelikes, whatever. Yeah. Whatever you picked. So that's
dead to rights. You've got me dead to rights, Andy. I'm a little embarrassed how well you know my taste. Yes, you got me. So that's very cool. So people listening, if you know, so maybe people who listen to this podcast and who, like you just said, align with my taste, they could select me if I'm not in it now, but if I was at some point in the future, they could click me.
I think it's in your future. You will be on it.
Okay, maybe in the future they
If
could
you'd
click me,
like
or
to
they
be.
could pick anybody. If they can pick any game critic or whoever's in the database that you already
Yeah,
have, and say, if you like what I like, then those will definitely flavor the offerings they get.
Exactly. And you often mentioned John at Gaming in the
Oh
Wild.
yeah,
Is that
good
right?
friend John.
Yeah, yeah. And so we've added him as an expert. We set up his account, and he's then done some work on picking games. And so that's great. He's there. But what was interesting was the process of picking games as an expert. We use our data to kind of throw up. Oh, perhaps this is one of the games you like. And actually, in the process of picking games, he came across 2 or 3 games that he hadn't heard of, but instantly was like, "Oh, this looks right up my street. What is this?" So, even that process of being an expert is kind of proof of the pudding that someone like him, who has, he knows lots of games, but he is finding these kind of eclectic things that are being thrown up that are matching his taste. So it's that's the kind of process. And
I
it's
mean, what better endorsement to have a critic
Yeah.
who you are mining for data to end up getting some data of their own by going through the process? I mean, that sounds pretty incredible.
Yeah, so I think it gives me confidence that it does work, because sometimes we're like, is this really working? And then you see someone use it, and you're like, yeah, it really does. And it can go any way. If you're new to games and you'll just start with, say, Mario Kart, or I don't know, Wii Sports or something, then the app can handle that, and it will throw up cards along with those tastes, but it will also test you with games. It will throw up an unusual game and say, "Oh, how about this?" And you then get the chance to say yes or no. So in that way, you kind of can hunt through the cards. You can also just search for games. So you could say, "Well, I know my 5 favorite games." So you search for those games and you put those into essentially your deck of, here's the games that I know and love, and then it uses those to do your suggestions. You can also do things like limit by platform, and then we've got special cards that do things like prioritize games that are on Game Pass or PlayStation Plus or couch co-op, and you can pull those into your deck as well. So you're kind of building this really custom, eclectic way of discovering games.
That kind of sounds like the Jokers in Balatro, right? Like you kind of have like a little wild card spin in there.
Yeah, I was thinking we could have some cursed cards. So it would put some games in that you wouldn't think you'd like, but maybe you would, or just throw some curveballs that it thinks you'll hate.
That's amazing. That is amazing. Okay, so let me ask you a question. That sounds fantastic, actually. We'll get to the nitty gritty in a second, but just as a general, just out of curiosity, and you don't feel the need to get into the weeds or anything, and I'm certainly not after trade secrets or whatever, but I guess I'm just really fascinated by the whole process of how you even got to this point. I mean, obviously the family database is probably the jumping off point for this, and this seems like an evolution of that. But like, so do you paint me a picture, like, you've got your daughter working in the office or whatever, you get a new game in and you got to categorize this game. Do you like have bullet points? Like, oh, it's first person. Oh, it's a roguelike. Oh, it's pixel based. I mean, like, how do you even go about even categorizing these things?
Yeah, so when we add a game record, we do all those kind of nuts and bolts of like, what genre is it? Is it first person? Is it third person? Is it co-op? Is it online co-op? All those sorts of things that you would want to know. We also add links to the store. But the key thing for the suggestions we do, and our kind of experts have a really good knowledge of games, and if they don't know it, we'll ask the team and we'll broaden it out. When they add a game, they just say, here's 5 other games that if you like this, these other games you will like as well. That's our bet. And then also, here's 10 others, which are less of a strong suggestion, but they would be good as well.
So fewer category matches then.
Say again?
Fewer category matches on the 10. Like the 5 have the most in common. Like, maybe they're all first person. And then when you get to your 10 fewer matches, maybe they're not first person, but maybe they share some other characteristics that the person has already liked then.
That is true, but it's not matching on categories. It's just this human person with their knowledge of games saying, here's 5 games. And so it could be, actually, there's this eclectic reason that both these games have got fishing, or both these games have got a particular mechanic, or they're from the same developer. So it's you get away from that kind of systematizing those suggestions that you see on websites. There's like 20 games like whatever, and often they're pretty bad. But by kind of sticking to saying, no, in the heart and mind of a human is where you find these suggestions, we get away from that tagging. And then as a secondary thing, once you've got, here's the selection based on those human suggestions, we can then use those tags to sort of say, well, what do we prioritize here? And if in your deck of cards they're all roguelikes or tactics games, then we would use that data to, within those human selections, to prioritize those, to get those to the top first. And that's what I really like about it. It is really different. Like the mechanics of what's happening behind the scenes is really different. And that's what set us up to then say, well, what would happen if you had an expert human come in whatever form? And that's how we can then layer in that kind of taste, because it is a very much taste-based suggestion. It's not based on hard data like other systems might do.
Interesting.
Or or like AI. Sorry to mention it, because this isn't information that's available online for an AI to go after and find. This is in the life of a person, and it only exists in the context of that person's taste. And so it feels like a really nice way to take this in a different direction, and to sort of just double down on we think people are great, and that it's those suggestions from people you know. That's kind of the tagline: people you trust. Those are the ones that stick, and that's people listening to you on your podcast. That's why we come back, because we know your taste, and so if you say something about a game, we're like, okay, well, I'm going to go and play that right away.
Excellent. Yeah, I got all those secrets and those preferences in the wetware in my head where AI can't steal it. So I guess you're onto something there.
Away.
Andy, this has been an amazing chat. Thank you so much for coming on board and talking about Ludocene. I will say, just as a quick asterisk, when I first had heard the name of this, Ludocene, I know you spell it like CENE, but I thought that maybe you're doing a play on words, as in Ludo meaning game and scene being like a homonym for SEEN, like Ludocene, like you're seeing games. But actually, no. What does it actually mean? Why did you pick that name?
So, we like the name because it is just a bit quirky and it's a bit counterintuitive, because if we were looking at this just as a hard business, we'd be like Best Game Finder or something. But the kind of the background of the game is there's this phrase that we're not expecting people to know called the Anthropocene, which is kind of like the thing that describes the geological era we're in, where humans have a, I guess, quite bad impact on the planet. That's the age we're in. And so we're sort of saying, oh, what is a different way to look at, how we might go forward together as a community? And this is Ludocene describes the time when kind of play and games and that kind of connection actually takes its place as a sort of a culturally significant part of society. So that all sounds very highfalutin, and it doesn't matter. But that's where it came. And we also just needed a game that had a free URL that no one else uses that phrase. Yeah. So if I now Google or search on Blue Sky for Ludocene, it's really nice because it's just us.
You're just the top pick every time. Well, that is very interesting, very highbrow, much more highbrow than my idea for the name was. So I
like
appreciate
yours.
it.
That was cool as well. So I think we'll just adopt that too.
You can have that free of charge if I use that, by the way. All right, Andy, it's time to say goodbye, but thank you so much for being here. And before you go, would you mind giving us the exact address where people can find the Kickstarter and donate to it?
Yeah, so the best thing to do is just to Google Ludocene, Ludocene. You could add Kickstarter, but you'll hit it anyway. The key thing is that any backer of the app will get access to the fully functional prototype with all the experts and all the data as soon as we fund, so immediately. We'll then do the work to spend the money on the team, and we're getting like designers. And then end of August, that's when it'll be available to everybody, and it will be free to everybody. All the data, all those base experts, and there will be a very small subscription level if you want kind of lots of extra cards, so that we can continue adding experts and continue adding different cards. But it was really important for us to say all that data and all those experts that we're talking about now, it's all free and it will stay free.
Interesting. Well, that's great. Andy, this sounds like a wonderful resource. I'm very much looking forward to seeing it in action, and I am very curious to see what it will suggest for me when I pick my 5 favorite games. So I'm going to put that to the test ASAP. Andy Robertson, thank you so much for coming on the show. It has been an absolute pleasure, and I wish you nothing but the best with Ludocene, and I look forward to it being fully funded, and I will download it on my phone, and life will just be that much better in this era.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been great. Thanks for having me on.
Bye-bye. Okay, that was the interview I did with Andy. Andy Robertson, thank you again for being here on the show with me. And I wish you the best of luck. We've got 9 days left and my fingers are crossed. I think this would be a very fun thing to do. So hopefully we can push you over the finish line. Also, this is another big day for guests, because not only do I have one guest, I actually have 2 guests. That's right. Two for the price of usually none. In addition to Andy, my son Whittaker makes a guest appearance. He's going to be the very, very, very last segment at the end of the show. I think I may even put him after the closing music if I'm feeling saucy. But he'll show up at the very tail end. He's going to be talking about Beyond Blue, for MetaQuest. Every once in a while, I'll get a VR code down the pike from PR or whatever, and I don't play any friggin' VR or anything like that. It's not my jam, but he does. He likes it, and I figure maybe I'll rope him in. He can give me some coverage, and then maybe people will get their game talked about, and people will hear about it and check it out. Unfortunately, I don't think my son liked this week's game very much, so a bit of a spoiler there. But again, Beyond Blue, Underwater VR, MetaQuest 2 game. If you want to hear my son talk about that, it'll be the very, very last thing on the show. All right, moving on to regular housekeeping stuff. A couple days ago was the ID at Xbox showcase. They had a number of things on display, of course, but a couple of things that stood out to me real quickly. I think the first thing was Herdlings. That comes from developer Okomotive, and they are the people behind the lovely Far Lone Sales, which has been one of my favorite indie experiences of the last several years. I thought Far was just amazing. I have not played the sequel yet, but the first one really stuck with me for a long time. I still think about it fairly often. And Okomotive's new one, Herdlings, it seems like you're a person who is guiding a group of furry beasts somehow across a landscape. I would not have guessed it was from them because it's a totally different visual style, totally different presentation, totally different concept than their last work, which is absolutely fine. I welcome creativity like that. But it didn't seem to have any of their hallmark things that they were kind of known for from the Far games. But I am 100% on board to give it a shot. I thought their work was great, and whatever they do, I want to check that out. Also, interested in seeing Blueprints. Obviously a play on words because this game is about a person inside of a house where the rooms move, apparently, or you put the rooms in a puzzle kind of a thing. So Blueprints or Blueprints to the house. See what they're doing there? It's like from the trailer, like a person has to figure out the puzzle of a house within a certain number of days in order to get their inheritance, and it's something real special. So you go inside, and apparently you can move the rooms around, and if you put them in a certain way, it kind of, I don't know, unlocks something, or you progress or somehow. I don't know the whole deal, but from the trailer, it looked pretty intriguing, and I would like to see more of that for sure. And the last game that really caught my attention was kind of a hit and a miss, and I guess I've got very mixed feelings about this. It was called Hotel Barcelona, and it comes from, so oddly, two Japanese developers that I'm very familiar with. One of them I love, and one of them I can't stand. The one I can't stand is Suda51. I really dislike his work. I don't like his writing. I don't like what he does with games. He is kind of like the antithesis of things that I like in games. And so I've played almost all of his works because I keep trying to give him a shot, because he ends up getting really, critically darlinged, you know what I mean? Dude has done stuff like Flower, Sun, and Rain, Killer 7, Shadows of the Damned, Lollipop Chainsaw, No More Heroes. I hate all those games. I think they're just terrible. So ordinarily, I would just give this a pass and just never think of it again. But he's working with a Japanese developer who is actually one of my favorites of all time, Swery65. I love the dude. I've actually met him several times. We've hugged. Good friend of mine, and I appreciate all of his work. And he has done stuff like Deadly Premonition is probably the biggest thing that he's known for, which I loved. But he's worked on some other things. Extermination, Spy Fiction. What else here? D4, Dark Dreams Don't Die. The Missing, J.J. Macfield and the Island of Memories, which was great. A couple of The Good Life. That was a good one, too. So I just feel really conflicted here. I cannot stand Suda51, but I love Swery65. I do not know who would be the chocolate and who would be the peanut butter in that situation. Who would come out on top? Whose influence would be stronger? How this would even work? Maybe it would be great because, Suda is really known for strong visuals, terrible writing. And I think that Swery has great writing, but has always kind of struggled with the technical side of things. Maybe this will be like a super group kind of a thing, like a Traveling Wilburys sort of moment. And the parts will be better than, the whole will be better than the parts. Parts better than the whole, whatever. You know what I'm saying? So maybe it'll work. But I am, I'm kind of on tenterhooks about this. But we shall see. The only other thing to mention in housekeeping this week is that there is a problem over at Respawn Entertainment, the makers of Titanfall, which I think is great, and Apex Legends, which I'm not so hot on, but is apparently still pretty popular. What's going on is that the voice actors who they have worked with for the last several years, I think 6 years is what they said it was, who have given the voices to all the characters in Apex Legends, they were asked to sign a new contract, which basically says they have to sign away their rights in order to have their voices be digitized into AI, which is basically going to put them out of a job, because once you give away your voice print and your voice rights, they can still use your voice for basically eternity and never have to pay you another cent. So the voice actors obviously did not want to put themselves out of a job for just one more paycheck. And they all, I believe, last I heard, they were going to be quitting Apex Legends, like as a group, because none of them wanted to, throw anybody else under the bus. And they were presenting a unified front that they do not accept giving themselves over to AI in this way. And I fully support that 100%. So big problems over there, and big problems with AI in general. Speaking of which, and on a related note, I got another PR release from SAG-AFTRA, the Hollywood Actors Union, who also cover voice actors. They're going to be protesting, I believe it was WB Studios this week, in the ongoing struggle. I believe they've been on strike. The voice actors have been on strike since last year. I want to say it was July 2024. We haven't heard much about it lately, but apparently the strike is ongoing. They haven't resolved the issues specifically with voice actors. And again, kind of relating to AI. I mean, if this is your job, if your voice is your living, why in the world would you sign a contract that says you can give your voice away to somebody else and they will make money on it and use it forever, probably even a million years after you're dead, and you get nothing out of it? That's crazy. So I think that's a huge problem, and I'm glad that SAG-AFTRA is supporting those actors in this strike. So a lot of voice actors are really feeling the pinch right now, and a lot of people in the game industry trying to take advantage of them. So I guess fuck you. But we'll see how that goes, and my heart and support goes out to the actors over at Apex Legends and the actors who are still protesting all of the AI implementation in Hollywood. So best of luck to everyone there. And I think that's going to do it for housekeeping. Just about to dive into the main portion of the show here. But before we do, just a quick bit of compliance with FCC regulations, letting you know that, and I'm going to take a quick look. It looks like correct. I think all the games that I'm going to be talking about on this show have been given to me by PR for the purposes of review, coverage, promotion, so forth and so on. So full disclosure, all these games here were given to me for free. And there we go. All right, folks, I guess we should start it with circle backs, huh? That's usually how I start the show, where I circle back to things that I've covered in depth on previous episodes. Not going to get into all the details again right now, but this is just kind of a quick update to let you know if my thoughts have changed on a game for better or for worse after spending more time with it. And this week we actually have a little bit of a bonus. Rather than just doing the normal circle back, I actually have two circle back reviews that are official So Videogames reviews, which will go up on Metacritic. These will be actually written up and scored. Let's start it off with Stories from Soul, the Gun Dog. I talked about this last episode, and spoiler, it's a banger. This is as a quick recap, you can go back to the last episode to hear all the details, but basically it is a visual novel done in a old school Japanese PC style, which kind of reminds me a little bit of Snatcher, and a little bit like Phoenix Wright in some ways, but mostly like Snatcher if people are familiar with that. But basically, it's kind of a faux retro throwback visual novel. There's a couple different presentation types, black and white or monochrome or full color. But basically, you play a character who is a officer in a sci-fi space navy. You're getting shipped out to Jupiter or something like that in order to go on a test run for something. You've got a little bit of a checkered past. You got into some combat, but there were problems with your Gundam-style mech, and so your whole crew died while you were forced to sit on the sidelines and watch because you couldn't fly your mech into battle. That messed you up a little bit. So you've got some baggage. Other people remember how that went down, and they've got some umbrage to take out against you. But regardless, you go on this ship and you think you're going to be doing some kind of a military thing in visual novel style. You meet people on the ship, you talk to them. Everybody's got a really cute portrait. Music is absolutely on point. Very retro, but very cool. Lots of appropriate themes that really convey the emotion of each scene. The animations are very emotive, and I think they're very indicative of what kind of person each character is. Just from a couple frames, you can kind of get their vibe. This person is silly. This person's angry. This person's kind of flirty. A lot is being communicated with the visuals, which I think is really great. It's always good to show more than you tell. I will say that also kind of for the writing, although the writing is telling, it's very economical. I think it's very to the point, but it's also very descriptive, very personable, and funny. It's really hard to be funny when you're doing games and games writing, but they nail it here. I think the writing is really outstanding. I think every character has great dialogue, strong personality, very clear storytelling, which I think is also a feat in itself, and just so many like little warm human moments that very easily could not have been there. So I really want to give special shout out to the writing. I think it's just outstanding. I'm not going to really give away the whole thing here, but needless to say, what you think is going to be a generic mission out in the stars to do some military stuff quickly turns into something else. I'm not gonna give away the whole plot, but let me just say it quickly turns into a murder mystery. And so there's kind of a genre switch. You have to do things that you didn't think you're going to have to do. The game unfolds in a surprising way. And it all works. It really works so well. Graphics are on point. There are little mini games to engage in that can only be done in the realm of video games. I mean, everything about it just really comes together. I think the story choices, the way they're presented, is really good and clear. I think the UI is really excellent. I mean, overall, I think it's just really outstanding. I had a couple of problems with the story flow that I was talking to the developers about. I believe they've really gone back to the drawing board and patched some of that stuff. But overall, I just had like a marvelous time. I really couldn't put this game down. I had just the most enjoyment with it. It was fun. It was reminiscent of good stuff from the past, but it also was modernized. It's not just a nostalgia trip. I think it's a really tight piece of work that anybody who likes sci-fi stories or visual novels can really enjoy. It just really moved along at a good pace, and I appreciate that. It's very tough to do a good visual novel that really leverages its medium, but this one succeeds in every aspect. I just could not get enough of this one, and I am very excited to see what these developers do next. This one, basically, it's my strongest recommendation if you are a fan of visual novels. They just don't really come better than this, honestly, as far as I'm concerned. So this one gets really top marks for me. I think overall, and I did finish this, by the way, overall, Stories from Seoul, the Gun Dog, it's really the shit. I give it a solid 8.5 out of 10, and my highest possible recommendation for visual novel fans. It's just a blast. And if you like this show, there's a real good fucking chance that you are going to like this game as well. So kudos, Stories from Seoul, the Gun Dog, 8.5 out of 10. All right, but that's not all. I did promise you 2 full So Videogames reviews, and I'm about to deliver on that promise right now. The second full in-depth review of this particular episode is Rogue Waters, which I did cover last episode when Carlos was on. Rogue Waters, what a banger, dude. Like, it is a great turn-based isometric roguelike set in a kind of Pirates of the Caribbean style world. I am still working my way through. I haven't rolled credits yet, but I've put a very significant amount of time into it. I know the system's inside and out. I've maxed out a lot of stuff. So I feel extremely comfortable in saying that I can speak knowledgeably about this game. And I love it. I think it's actually really great. First things first, I think the screenshots are a little bit rough. Presentation's a little bit rough. Anybody who is a graphics whore or really needs like all the P's in the graphics might be a little disappointed. But I think for me, it doesn't really matter. I like experimental games. I like slightly janky games because that's where you get the good stuff, right? That's where you get the developers kind of going out of their comfort zone, experimenting, trying new things. And that really is true here. There's a lot about Rogue Waters that I think is kind of experimental, but a lot of these experiments are really paying off. So it's a little bit janky. Animation's not the greatest. Graphics not the greatest. It doesn't have like the largest suite of features, but I mean, it really doesn't matter because what they get right, they get absolutely right. You have an immortal pirate. He puts together a team of rogues who have their specialties. There's a big fat cook guy. There's a lady with a poison blade. There's a sharpshooter. There's a guy with a big scimitar, a brawling guy. I mean, there's all sorts of different pirates you can take with you in addition to your regular run-of-the-mill pirates. You put together a crew. You get on your ship. There's multi-layered combat. You have different cannons. You have different accessories to equip on your deck, and you have a different crew you can equip on your ship. You go out into a roguelike map where you have the choice between different paths and different nodes. Very similar to something like Slay the Spire, but like I said before, if that particular thing isn't broke, don't fix it, and that thing is certainly not broke. So you go out on the ocean, you make your choices, you have your battles, you have your different random events, you got your story events, so forth and so on. But the battle is really where this game shines because it's multi-layer battle, 2-layer battle at least, where the initial thing is ship versus ship. You look at all the cannons and the accessories and the crew you have. You see the enemy ship as you're parked side by side, and you fire your cannons. And you have to tactically decide what you want to take out on the enemy side. Because when you get to the second part of the battle, when your crew boards, whatever you did not take out will be there to fight against on the ship. So let's say, for example, there's a particular swordsman that you hate. If you can blow that guy up in the ship-to-ship portion, he will not be there to fight when you get to the deck. Or if you think it's more important that you preserve your own your own accessories and your own crew, maybe you play more defensively. So when you actually get to the ship portion, maybe there's more of that stuff left over to fight against when you do the character-to-character combat. It's a brilliant system that I honestly don't think I've ever seen implemented before. If somebody knows of something similar, please let me know. But for me, this felt incredibly fresh. This is certainly not something that is very common, so I love that idea. And then when you get to the actual pirate versus pirate on deck combat, it's really great. I mean, movement and positioning is super key. There's all sorts of different abilities you can have, and a lot of them are key to movement. So you're always thinking about strategy. Where am I standing? What am I standing next to? Who am I standing next to? How many squares away am I? What's in the environment that I can leverage? Can I push somebody off the deck? Can I shove somebody into a mast? What can I leverage? You've also got a Kraken that comes to your backup. There's also two other monsters as well. I'm not going to spoil those, but they come out to help you as well, which is kind of neat, having a little superpower. And you just go on this Pirates of the Caribbean themed adventure where you're going after this enemy pirate of yours who has his own special abilities, and it's just the whole thing comes together so well. I'm just like Soul the Gun Dog, I'm having the best time. It's strange that I kind of went through a dry spell recently, and then these two killer games came out basically back to back. So for someone like me who really enjoys turn-based tactics and roguelikes, I mean, this is basically the complete package. It's got interesting systems, interesting characters. It's got a lot of permanent progression between runs. It's got a story mode, and it's also got modes where you can just level up if you wish. I mean, they've really thought of everything here, and the changes to the genre that they've added, I think, are really notable. And I want to take my hat off because it's not easy to kind of break the mold in this genre. A lot of games are comfortable kind of copying what other people have done, but these developers, I think, have really done a superb job of looking at something, looking at the formula, genuinely adding something new, and having this result be something that is just really fucking fun to play. I've had a very tough time putting this down. I'm usually doing at least 1 or 2 runs per day, which is kind of killing my productivity because I got other games to play. But Rogue Waters is great. If you like turn-based tactics, if you like roguelikes, if you like pirates, it's great. It's fucking great. I love it. So overall, for the full Videogames review, just like Gundog, this one gets 8.5, very high marks. I think this is an excellent game. It's absolutely going to be on my top 10 of the year, and it's one to watch out for, especially if you like those genres I mentioned. This is a sleeper. Don't let it pass you by. All right, folks, those are all the circlebacks, and I think doing 2 full reviews for circlebacks is more than a heaping helping. So we are now going to move on to the main portion of the show. All right, first up is a turn-based 2D roguelike quasi-RPG, I guess. Not really RPG, but some RPG mechanics called Break the Loop. This is by developer Mastodonte. This is... Gosh, they're taking a very basic formula of roguelike, and I'm playing it on PS5. It really feels like a mobile game, though, honestly. I kind of wonder if that's where it originated. I'm not sure. I didn't do the research. We don't do research on the show, but basically, it's a pretty cute art style. Everybody's really low detail. Kind of looks like hand-drawn kind of art. Like, gosh, I don't know. Just very, like, low poly, low detail, but it's very appealing. Like the bright, solid colors and kind of chunky style. I think that's pretty good. Basically, you are, oh gosh, I can't even remember what the story is. You're out to stop some bad guy or something. I don't remember what the story is. It honestly doesn't matter. There's not really much storytelling in it. You go into the game, 2D presentation, like I just said, your heroes on the left, bad guys on the right. And then you have a series of abilities. Each person is a different class. And I think there's like 4 or 5 different like overall classes. And then within those classes, there are like at least 2 or 3, boy, I can't talk. Yikes. Sorry, folks. 2 or 3 different people within each class. So like maybe you've got like magic user class, and that's not what it's called. It's called something else. But then you've got like the one who does like acid, and then there's one who does wind, and the one who does healing or something. So there's like 4 or 5, whatever basic groups of folks. And once you get through the tutorial, you basically have to choose one from each group to make up your party. And then you go through these turn-based battles with randomized events. It's pretty straightforward. It's about as basic a roguelike turn-based action game as you could possibly imagine. If you could imagine like the basic framework for one of these games, strip away all the detail and just peel it back to the bare metal, that's kind of what this game feels like. It's basic, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, but I'm struggling to think of what makes it stand out, what the hook is. I mean, it runs just fine, it plays fine, but the abilities are not very exciting. Like, any good roguelike, you need variety to change things up, to kind of keep things fresh. Otherwise, you're kind of doing the same thing over and over, and I think this game falls prey to that very quickly. Despite having the different character classes, it basically plays the same no matter who you have, with very little variation. And whenever you get a power-up through a random event or as a reward or something, it's always something just pretty minor. Like, it didn't ever feel like game-changing. It didn't change anybody's powers. It didn't change the way that any of the characters interact with each other. It was just like, slightly heal if you do this power, or if you do this other power, somebody in the back row will get like a buff or something. I mean, it was all just basically like whatever, pretty forgettable. UI is not super great. I would like better tooltips. And I think that in contrast to the very nice art when you're playing the game, when they do give you the sporadic cutscenes or interstitial content, it's really poor artwork. It looks like marker drawings on paper, and it's really kind of ugly, especially in contrast to how nice it looks when it's in the game. I don't know why they didn't just take in-game shots and use those instead, or just use that same style. It looks really janky when you compare the two styles side by side. They don't match at all, and so it's kind of ugly in presentation. I mean, it's a game that works. It's a roguelike where you put a party together and you can attack guys and you can progress and things happen, and it's kind of a game that works. It's pretty basic, and I gotta be real honest, there's about 1,000 examples of roguelikes that are better and more memorable than this one. So although there's nothing like bad about it, nothing wrong, nothing broken, I mean, it works just fine. It's cute enough, I guess. It just doesn't really stand out in any way, and it doesn't really bring anything new to the table, and it kind of ignores all of the innovations and curiosity and ideas that have come down into the roguelike genre recently. And the roguelike genre has been exploding recently. I mean, the bar has been just like raised. So I just don't think it's good enough to put out a game that works. But that's kind of what Break the Loop did. It works. That's all I can really say for it. So Break the Loop from Mastodonte. I played it on PS5. It's the most basic turn-based roguelike ever, and I would probably recommend 999 other games before I would recommend this one. So there you go. Next up is Luck Be a Landlord, playing this on the Switch by developer Trampoline Tales. Now, I saw this one a while ago, and I gotta be frank, it did not catch my attention. I saw it, and I'm like, yeah, not for me, maybe. But then Balatro kind of exploded, and everybody loves Balatro so much that I went back to this one. And I'm like, I'm seeing some similarities here, so maybe I should check this out, if for no other reason than to let people know that this game exists. This one predates Balatro, I believe, at least by a couple months, if not a year. And it's at heart kind of the same sort of thing, and on its most basic level. I'm not saying that Balatro is just like this, or vice versa, but I'm saying the concept of kind of wild carding your way through randomness and kind of like being strategic about the things you choose. At its most basic concept, I think this has a lot in common with Balatro, even though they're not really, you would never mistake them for being twins, right? So Luck Be a Landlord, very basic, straightforward presentation. You're looking at what looks like a giant slot machine on your screen. There's no characters, there's no story or anything like that. You just look at this giant screen of stuff, like a 5-tier slot machine. And you have to, quote unquote, earn rent in a certain number of turns, which is just like paying the ante in Balatro. So you have to earn your rent in a certain number of turns, and you do that by collecting coins. When you roll the slot machine, like in the beginning, there's not much in there. It's almost empty. There's a couple fruits or symbol or something, who knows what. And like each one of those, when you roll it and the roller stops, you get like 1 coin. And so if you need 50 coins by the end of 5 turns, you're not going to get there. But after the end of each turn, you get offered like a new symbol. It could be anything. It could be a thief. It could be an egg. It could be a piece of candy. It could be a car. It could be a snake. It could be like anything. There's like a hojillion little symbols, right? Gems, whatever, coal, miner, things like that, dice, card suits, all that stuff. And so when you get to the end of a roll, they give you the option, choose one of these things to add to your, slot machine. So even though it starts out pretty empty, after a couple rolls, the screen will start to fill up because you've picked more and more of these things, one per turn. And the hook to this is you want to choose things that have synergy with other things so that when you roll the slot machine or spin the slot machine, whatever, when they come up, you want to have those things side by side with each other. And if they are, then anything that has synergy will interact with the thing that's next to it, and then you will get way more coins. So for example, if you choose the miner on your first roll, a guy in a hard hat, he's got a pickaxe or whatever, you pick the miner. Nothing really happens of note the first time. But in the second roll, if you choose like a piece of stone that he can break, or gems, or a piece of coal or something like that, if you pick one of those things, add it to your slot machine, roll the slot machine again, and if the miner ends up next to that gem or whatever you chose, he'll bust it, and then you get like way more gems from doing that, right? There's a crook, and if you choose the crook at first, he's got some kind of power, and you can choose a police officer the next round. If the police officer ends up next to the crook, he catches him, and then something happens, and you get a bunch of coins from it. So it's kind of a cool idea. It's kind of playing on that same basic idea that Balatro has of like having jokers to interact with different things and kind of affect how you play the game. So ideally, that's what's going on. Although I will say that Luck Be a Landlord didn't quite do it for me because I felt, well, a couple of things. Number one, it's pretty random. Like it's just as random as rolling a slot machine or spinning a slot machine or whatever you want to call it. I'm not from Vegas, so I don't know. But like, you don't have a whole lot of skill. Really, your only interaction is choosing the options between rolls, which I guess is fine, but I feel like it's really overcomplicated. There's a lot of symbols and there's a lot to read in each one, and it's really hard to kind of keep track of who has synergy with what. And there's a lot of like if then conditions, and then if this, but then this, and then not this. And honestly, after a while, I was like, I can't even keep up with all this. Like there's just too much to read and there's too many things going on. And on top of it all I'm doing is really pushing a button and rolling a slot machine. So I think if the descriptions were simpler, if the interactions were easier to understand at a glance, or if you could maybe kind of pause the game and kind of read up on things, it would be better. But I felt honestly like after a couple rounds of trying to figure it out, I was just like, whatever. And I was just picking stuff at random and spinning the wheel and just hoping things would work. And I had pretty good luck with it, honestly. I wasn't even trying really. And I had some pretty long runs, just randomly pushing buttons. And it all just kind of worked. But it ultimately felt a little bit unsatisfying to me. I get what they're going for. I think it's a cool idea. It might be something fun just to mess with for a few minutes. But I did not feel ownership, and I did not feel like I was able to really like get into the systems very much. And even if you do read up those descriptions of each item, again, it's just random. Like you could pick the miner and the gem, and you might go 5 rolls without those things ever getting close to each other. It's just super random. So I think between the sheer amount of luck and the, I don't know, obtuseness of like all the different items and just the impenetrability of some of it, I kind of bounced off of it. But, I think that there is something here. And if you really like Balatro a lot, I mean, I think it's worth a look even, it's not that expensive. It's portable on the Switch. You can play it, as you go, or maybe you want your PC, whatever. But if you want something of that similar flavor, it's worth a look. So if you're a Balatro head, check it out. Otherwise, I don't know. It's not for me really, but maybe somebody else who likes to gamble. If you're a gambler, if you're like a slot machine junkie, or like I said, if you like Balatro, maybe worth a look. So that is Luck Be a Landlord from Trampoline Tales. Next up is Cabernet. This comes to us from Party of Introverts, brand new developer, I believe. So this is a neat one that I feel like is not quite ready for prime time. As we always say on the show, the best time to play any game is 6 months after release. And I feel like this is absolutely one of those times where I can definitely see potential and ideas and coolness happening here. It just does not feel like it's ready. So let's get into it, folks. Cabernet is a visual novel / RPG. Good mix. Of a woman. Her name is Lisa, I believe. And this is like, I want to say this is what, 1800s or something like that. It's like old timey times. I don't know exactly what it is, but it's not modern day for sure. People are still using like kerosene lamps and stuff. So whenever that was, the kerosene lamp era. She dies at the very beginning of the game. And this is not a spoiler. I mean, this is like in all the trailers. It's what the game is about. So I'm not spoiling anything. She dies and she is resurrected as a vampire. And she doesn't know how or who or why. And up until this point, she didn't even know that vampires were real. And so she is very confused by this whole thing. She enters, she leaves the basement where she wakes up and she enters the house above. And there's a whole bunch of people in there who are also vampires. There's like a vampire society. So she doesn't know anything at first. She meets people, talks to people, makes friends and so forth. And then she quickly tries to settle herself. And the other vampires say that they're going to help her find her way. And then they all have their own, quests and agendas and stuff like that. It's a pretty interesting approach because, yes, you are a vampire, but you are also a human being who's kind of coming to grips with it. You're not a creature of the night. Like you're just brandly newly turned. That's not a phrase. I guess it is now, but it's not. Brand newly turned. And you're just, you're rough on everything. You need help. You don't quite know how your powers work. You don't quite know what your place in the world is. And so this is a side view kind of 2D presentation, pretty basic graphics, but I think they're definitely cute enough. Kind of looking like paper cutouts or like, kind of really low detail kind of thing. I guess that's a theme this episode, but I think it's attractive enough. I think it's pretty cute. I will say also every line in this game is voice acted. And I think in general, the voice acting is really quite good. Much better than I expected it to be, much better than you would think it would be. I think the voice acting is really quite good. So kudos to the voice director and all of the performers. I think it's quite nice. So the game begins and then you kind of like find your feet, you get a place to live, you have some vampire friends, and then you have a bunch of quests, and then you start figuring out what you want to do. You very often will have a moral choice where you'll get an option to say something that's either really nihilistic or really humanistic, and you kind of go back and forth. I've heard from people you can max out both. I don't know how that's possible or if that's even true, but that's what I've heard. But basically, depending on what you say to people, you'll choose one or the other, kind of like the Renegade Paragon system, like in Mass Effect back in the day. One's a blue bar, one's a red bar. And that's all fine. You pick up various items that you can use here or there, and you kind of just go through this small town. You can walk around within reason, checking out houses, seeing what's open. There's some stores. There's a graveyard. There's places to go. But it's a pretty small world, and I think that's fine. It does not need to be very large. In fact, I think being even larger would be a detriment. So good premise, good voice acting, good presentation. Like it's off to a good start. But for me, I think that the developers just didn't quite get there yet. I think that they probably will. I mean, I think to start with, I'm playing this on the Switch, and this does not feel optimized for the Switch at all. There's lots of very little text. It's not quite as bad as some games I've seen, but it's quite small in some areas. And instead of using the controller and buttons, you often have to use the stick to like maneuver a cursor in the way that a mouse moves, which is not great and not optimal. It seems like it would be much more effective if you could just use the D-pad or buttons like a normal menu-based game for console/handheld. So that's a problem. I think some of the UI needs a little bit of cleanup, and everything is not quite organized as well as you might want it to be. As you get further in the game, I think one of the problems also is that they don't tutorialize very well. I feel like there was a lot of questions I had that are not very well explained, and certain things just are kind of like left unsaid, which becomes a problem because I think that there are a lot of like dead ends in this game. For one thing, you can only save back at your room. And so if you die out in the world by sunlight will kill you instantly. You can also run out of blood and die. And so if that happens, you die. And if you don't have a save in the room that you're staying in, it's a question mark as to how far back you're going to get put. And I got put back pretty far back one time. I died because of sunlight, and it was just like pretty miserable. I lost like 20-25 minutes of gameplay, which for me is too much to go back to. So I think the saving is an issue. I'll also say that some of the quests are just really kind of obscure and like they don't quite make sense sometimes, but there's also a lot of dead ends, and I'll tell you what I mean. Like, so for example, I needed to go talk to I needed to get in this house. I needed to find some documents. The queen vampire of the area wanted me to go to this person's house, become their friend, and then once I had permission to enter their house, because I'm a vampire, I needed to go and find these special documents for whatever reason. So fine, I start doing this quest. Takes me a little while because I'm just not figuring things out. There's a clock that runs, and you have a certain amount of time until you have daylight. You got to get back before daylight. So I'm like, okay, that's fine. I made some headway, but then I'm like, it's getting close to sunrise. I need to get back to my room. I should probably do that. But I got to a part in the game where I could not go back. They needed me to proceed. I couldn't just leave. Even though I'm a vampire, I could have left through the door, could have left through a window, could have turned into a bat and flown away. I could have done a lot of things, but they had me stay there. And so I was getting really stuck. Couldn't leave. I had to just finish the quest. That was my only choice. And so by the time I tried to finish the quest, I ended up not finishing it because I wasn't quite sure what to do. But the sun came up and I died. And I'm like, well, this sucks because I really wanted to just go back the next day, progress the quest at my own pace. But I couldn't do that. And I think that developers kind of missed a trick there by not letting players have a little bit more control over how these quests unfold. There's also the matter of blood. In the very first 2 chapters, you don't get to drink from any people. They also talk about feeding from animals, and you don't get to do that either. And there is a store that sells blood to you, but you can't access it because the person in the store is a quest giver. And so I think the developers, again, kind of like didn't playtest enough because I ended up running out of blood. I had like 1 pixel left of blood. I was at death's door myself, and I needed to buy some blood. I couldn't buy some blood because the person needed me to do a quest for them, but I couldn't do it because I was too low on blood. I didn't have any other blood, and I was like, I can't do anything, and I'm like stuck. So I actually was so stuck, I had to email the PR, and I'm like, yo, what the hell do I do with this? And they're like, oh, yeah, well, you have a vial of blood in your inventory, and you use that until chapter 3. And I'm like, I do? I didn't realize anybody even gave me a vial. So I did check my inventory. There was a vial there, which I was surprised by. I drank it. It was like a tiny, tiny ass portion of blood. It was like just enough to get you out of a pinch, but I was like so far gone by making mistakes and taking too long and just doing different things with my vampire powers. I was just way too low on blood to really even do anything. And I think that's another area where the developers missed a trick, right? You have to account for people fucking around and making mistakes, and not everybody playing the game the way that you play it. So I was like, I was so hard up for blood. I had no resources. I couldn't do anything. I drank the blood that was in my vial, and I was it. And so I was like, I don't even know how far back I would even have to load a save to fix this. Probably I would have to like just restart the whole game. And I'm like, I'm not going to do that right now. So I feel like ultimately this is a cool game with cool ideas, cool premise, and excellent voice acting. I think this is basically a winner, but it needs to be fixed. Like they need to like player proof or dummy proof. And if that makes me the dummy, then it's fine. So be it. But like I found a number of issues like this, like the kind I just talked about, where a player could get into trouble and not really have an easy way out of it. And game developers need to realize like players are going to fuck up. Like they're going to make mistakes. They're going to do things you don't expect them to do. And you have to think about that, and you have to have a contingency. Like there needs to be an easy place to get blood, or you need to have a way to get back to your room if the sun gets too close to rising, or, so forth and so on. There's got to be an out. Otherwise it just leads to being a very frustrating experience. And it just is very clunky and cumbersome. So I think these developers are absolutely on the right track. If Party for Introverts is listening, I think this is a great beginning of a game. It just needs some polish. Like the rough edges need to be sanded off. It needs to be play tested a little more thoroughly. There needs to be a couple more backdoors built into it to kind of, especially at the beginning, to avoid these kind of like traps that somebody like me can fall into. And it just sours the whole experience. If I didn't get stuck, I could easily imagine playing all the way through this and having a great time. But I'm a busy guy. My time is limited. I put some time into this game, and I'm not going to like go back to the start and do this over. Not only because I just don't want to do that in general, but like I have no guarantee that that's not going to happen again when I get to chapter 3 or chapter 4 or chapter 5, right? Like if this already happened to me so many times at the beginning, it's probably going to happen to me again. And I'm just not going to invest time in a game where it's likely that I will get stuck through no fault of my own, just by playing a game in a way that the developers didn't predict or didn't expect. So I ended up like bouncing on this one, and I feel kind of sad about it because I think there's some good stuff here, but maybe I'll come back in 6 months or, whatever, if the developers like fix this and, patch some things and change some things. I would come back to it for sure. But in its current state, I feel like it's too rough and it just isn't quite playtest enough for my taste. So I got to bounce. So I am sad. I'm crying a tear. But I do think Cabernet is worth looking into. If you like the idea of vampires or a new take on vampires, or you want a 2D RPG, which I think is pretty well done, some excellent voice acting. It's really charming, right? I want to like this game a lot. I really do. I just can't because of what happened, and I don't want to do that to myself again. But I definitely think it's worth looking into, maybe in 6 months, but still worth a look at some point. So that is Cabernet from Party of Introverts, and I was playing that on the Switch. All right, at this point, I'm going to give you guys a little peek behind the curtain into the inner workings of the So Videogames podcast here. So, full disclosure, I am now through the magic of podcast editing, recording, I think approximately 4 days after I started recording this podcast, through a number of things happening this week, work emergencies, family commitments, stuff I had to do, actual work, etc., etc., etc. I kept having to put off the show or doing part of the show and not getting done. In the past, I would usually do all of this in like Sunday morning and just get it all knocked out at once. But because of just changes in schedule and life, that hasn't really worked out very often lately. And so I am like the furthest I've ever been behind on getting the show out. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, like, I realize that I'm not on a deadline and I can, if I put a show out late or a week later, if I even skip one, nothing happens because I'm the boss of my own show, et cetera, et cetera. But, I have personal standards. I like to get out one show a week and I like to be on time with it. And as a podcast listener myself, I like it when people are prompt. And so I don't like when shows take, a delay for no reason. So I feel kind of bad about that. So, also, big apologies to Andy at the start of the show because I meant to get the show out like 3 or 4 days ago in order to give people maximum time to contribute to his Kickstarter. And y'all know how often we have guests on the show, like never. So, of course, it figures the 1 week that I do have a guest on is like one of my busiest weeks in memory. So, I think I'm going to change things up a little bit. I'm still going to shoot for at least once a week show, but I think what I'm going to do differently is I think instead of saving up all of my games and then trying to talk about them all at once, like on Sunday or something, I think what I'm going to do is play a game and then I'm just going to record it right away. And maybe I'll put it out that night. Maybe we'll get like a series of micro shows, or maybe I'll just at least have those clips and then I can put them all together on Sunday. And just, editing something takes a lot less time than recording something. So I think I need to change something. And I know I'm just talking to myself here and this is not really relevant to the show, kind of just taking up space, talking about my own stuff here. But I just, it kind of bugged me that I'm so late this week and it really it does not make me feel good. And I'm sure that people who listen are wondering what was taking so long. And the answer is life. But I think it's time to shift gears and just change the way that I'm recording. So I think starting with the very next episode, I will be doing something different. I don't know if I'll do one game per episode. We'll just have shorter episodes. Or maybe I'll just record them as I play and then stitch them together. I don't know. We'll see. But I think this trying to get it all done on one day is just not working. So anyway, sorry to diverge from the content here. We do have one more game coming up, but I just was thinking out loud to myself and I figured I would record it as well. Just because, stream of consciousness, whatever. So there you go. A little peek into Video Games. And I think that next week we will change gears and see how that goes. All right, back to our regularly scheduled program and the final game of the show, Monster Hunter Wilds, kind of a big one that people are talking about right now. So to set the stage, a little bit of background on me. I am a Monster Hunter guy, so just know that up front. I have been down with the series almost since the very beginning. I did jump aboard the very, very, very first Monster Hunter, which was on, if memory serves, PS2 in the year 2004. So 21 years ago, I did play that one, was very excited. The trailer for the original Monster Hunter was fire back then. It was so fucking cool. I just remember seeing that trailer going, holy shit, I want some of that. That looks amazing. Game was not amazing. I mean, you could see the idea there, but boy, it had so many problems and it was so weird and difficult and obtuse and just, I bounced off it. Didn't come back until Monster Hunter Freedom Unite on the PSP, or maybe it was Monster Hunter Tri on the Wii, whichever one. I eventually came back to it and I just like poured hundreds and hundreds of hours. I think in Freedom Unite, I think I had something like 500 hours, and in Tri, I think I had like a couple hundred hours. And ever since then, it's been kind of a family affair. Both my kids played. The wife plays. My wife is my favorite partner, and she does switch axe, and I usually do great sword and heavy bowgun. She sticks to the switch axe. I like to trade it up. But it's a family affair, right? Like whatever system is going on, we get multiple copies of the game and we just play together, and it's great. So I'm just saying this up front to let y'all know that I know about Monster Hunter. I have played basically all of them. I haven't finished all of them, but I have put a pretty good amount of time into all of them. I think the first one is probably the one I've played the least because it was just so rough and kind of shitty to play. But ever since then, we've been all in. And so Monster Hunter Wilds is the latest. Just came out for all of the big boy systems. It's on PC, Xbox, PlayStation, not the Switch. The last game that hit the Switch was Monster Hunter Rise, and that one was great. Monster Hunter Rise is awesome. So if you only have a Switch, or if you just don't want to spend the money on Monster Hunter right now, but you still want some of that action, Monster Hunter Rise is a really, really good experience. So I definitely recommend that one for sure. So what is Monster Hunter Wilds? If you don't know anything about Monster Hunter, let me just kind of set the scene for you here. Basically, gameplay happens in a world where there are these giant monsters running around, and people live in, I don't know, small villages or very small cities, and they're not the dominant species. Like, the monsters are kind of like ruling the planet, and people become hunters to kind of take care of monsters that are messing up their towns and villages. You use a variety of really big, oversized weapons, and then you go out into the field, and then you fight these monsters. So you can eventually kind of like think of Monster Hunter as kind of a, I don't know that it's necessarily a boss rush game, but it's kind of like a boss centric game where there are other things to do in each game, but really what you're here for is just to fight the monsters. And those are just like basically a series of boss battles. You start off on the low tier with maybe like a giant ostrich or a monkey or something like that. And then you work your way up to, you know, dragons and giant serpents and whatever. So every time you beat a monster, you carve it up for its parts. You can either kill monsters or you can trap them by making them fall into a pitfall trap or letting them step on a shock trap. And when they do that, you throw some tranquilizers at them and they pass out. Or you can just like straight up kill them. Either way, you're going to be harvesting them for parts. And those parts can turn into better weapons and better armor. So the idea basically at the core is you go out, find some monsters that are terrorizing your village, kill them, harvest their parts, chop them up, and then you use those parts to make, you know, swords, guns, hammers, and armor, and that kind of whole thing. You get that better stuff that makes you stronger, so you can take on the next monster that comes along. You kill that one, you get better stuff. You're stronger, so you can take on the next monster that comes along, so forth and so on. So it's kind of like a string of monster murdering and monster harvesting. Sounds kind of grim when you put it that way. And then you just work your way up to the top. And then you take out whatever apex predator is at the top of the food chain, and then credits roll, the end, you win. So it's a pretty straightforward formula, but it's really cool and historically just really interesting if you get into this. The other aspect that's kind of historically made Monster Hunter interesting is that they put a real focus on preparation and thinking about your gear, a lot of tinkering. So for example, you don't just make like a sword and it gets better. The next sword is +5. The next sword is +10. That's not how it works. Like, swords do have attack power, but they also have attributes. Like maybe a sword's got a fire component or a water component or a poison component. And so you need to figure out what your sword or your armor has. And then you need to figure out what's the monster you're going after. So if you're going after a monster that spits poison, bringing the poison sword isn't going to do anything. Maybe that monster is weak to fire, so you need to get a fire sword. And then when you come to your armor, you have to spec it out. You can change, mix and match parts and attributes. And so you can be like, okay, well, I need a sword that has fire because I know the poison monster is weak to fire. And I need strong defense against poison. So therefore, I will make an armor that has poison attributes. And so you kind of just do that kind of pattern for each monster, right? You figure out what they're weak to, what they're strong against. And then you craft armor and weapons that will put you in a good position to defeat that monster when it pops up. So there's a lot of tinkering with gear, stat modifications, that kind of thing. There's a lot of harvesting of materials to prepare for your next fight. I don't want to say that there's a lot of crafting, because there's not in the sense of regular crafting. Like, you're not making a workbench and then the workbench makes a house and then the house makes a castle, and you know, it's not that kind of crafting. I mean, there is crafting, but it's like you go and you harvest things in the environment and then you make things with those things. So for example, maybe you are going to a cold location. There's going to be some ice and snow, and you need to bring a hot drink to counteract the effects of the snow. So you go out into your area, maybe you go to a desert environment and you find a hot pepper. You harvest the hot pepper, bring it back to your base, you turn it into a hot drink, and then you bring the hot drink with you before you go to the snow area. So it's kind of like thinking about your mission. What's in the environment? What are you going to come up against? What's the monster got? And you like prepare. That's really like a huge part of the game. Half the game historically in Monster Hunter has been prepare for the game that you're about to partake in and then go do that thing. And very often it's the difference between failure and victory. Like, you know, a well-prepared hunter usually does well. Somebody who just goes ahead and just goes for it. I mean, yeah, you might win, but more often than not, you're going to get stuck. You're going to not have an antidote when you get poisoned, or you're not going to have a hot drink when you're in the cold area, or, you know, so forth and so on. So that's historically been a big part of Monster Hunter, which I think is also really cool and really great. And I like all this stuff a lot. It's been very fun. There's been many iterations of this formula over the years, over the last 21 years. And it's been, it's had its ups and downs for sure. So now we come to Monster Hunter World, and I realize that was a lot of preamble, sorry. But if you don't know what Monster Hunter is, I feel like it's worth it to kind of give you the backstory of what to expect. So coming to Monster Hunter World, Capcom, who is the developer of Monster Hunter, has had a very strong core audience. I mean, if you like Monster Hunter, you're probably liking it like a lot. They've got a real good core audience, of which I count myself a member of. And they get really fanatical and really go for it. And we do hard missions, and some of the monsters are really tough, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But I know that Capcom has wanted to expand the audience. And I think there's just generally been a feeling in the industry that Monster Hunter could be doing bigger numbers. And I agree. I often thought the same thing myself. I've said it many times on this podcast and in previous podcasts on the GameCritics.com podcast. And also in my reviews, you can look it up. I'm on the record as saying, I think the Monster Hunter formula is amazing, but some of the problem is that Capcom has historically really failed to tutorialize well, and they have failed to kind of like explain how the game works to people who are perhaps, and I mean this not in no insult whatsoever, but people who are perhaps more casual in their approach to games, right? People who don't want to read a spreadsheet about which monster drops which item for which armor and which armor you need and which one, so forth and so on. Like sometimes you just want to jump in and play, which I respect. But that has historically not been Monster Hunter, and so I know Capcom's wanted to open that up and get some more people in, right? And I think that they are doing that here. I think Monster Hunter World was the first real foray into changing things up, taking it to a big boy system, semi kind of sort of maybe-ish open-like world, not a real open world, but larger areas that could be navigated in a different way than the series has historically done, kind of integrating online in a different way. So I think Monster Hunter World was the first step towards that, and I think Monster Hunter Wilds is the next step. Capcom is clearly looking at this formula, seeing what's cool. I mean, what's cool about it is giant monsters that look amazing, multiplayer battles. The game is definitely geared towards multiplayer, although you can solo everything. And also cool armor, doing some Fashion Souls kind of stuff is pretty fun. So I think there's a lot to like here, and I think Monster Hunter Wilds captures a lot of the good, but for me, who is a longtime Monster Hunter head and who has known the formula, known how the game works, I've put in the time, I think a lot of stuff is changed here, and I don't necessarily know that it's for the better, perhaps. So Wilds is basically like any other Monster Hunter in the sense that you're a hunter, you show up to a village, there's monsters causing trouble, and you got to get to the bottom of it. Cool. I mean, that's kind of the basic premise, and I don't think we really need anything other than that. I think that's fine. But the experience this time around, I think, has a different flavor to it. There's more emphasis on story, which I don't necessarily think is a good step forward. There's lots of cutscenes, and to be perfectly frank, I don't really have a lot of interest in the characters or the events. In the past, you would just show up to a village, they'd give you a couple little lines, hey, there's monsters out here, they're messing us up, and then you would kind of be free to do whatever you want, to kind of like putter around and kind of take whatever side missions you want to do and that kind of thing. But in Wilds, they really keep you on a track and kind of keep you pushing forward. It's almost like they're just trying to get you through the campaign as quickly as possible with as much focus as possible, which I think in some ways is fine, but I don't necessarily know that Monster Hunter is an experience that needs to be kind of rushed through. I think it would be fine if they took pauses, if there were more side quests, if there was more freedom to do the things you wanted to do. And I think that kind of goes hand in hand with the increased focus on cutscenes and story, which I don't think really help. There's a lot of downtime, a lot of watching. And in fact, I've kind of gotten to the point where I'm just skipping story now. I may be like halfway through the campaign and I don't even care about the story. I just push the skip button and move on. But also a lot of the systems that Monster Hunter has been built on historically are either pared back or they're just not spotlighted at all. And in what I can only see as an effort to get more people in to stay on this kind of campaign roller coaster ride and get them going from fight to fight to fight with a minimum of fuss, with a minimum of grinding or farming for parts or crafting, and just to get them from fight to fight. So I don't necessarily feel like a easier difficulty is inherently a bad thing. I mean, I think it's good because you don't want new players getting crushed by really difficult monsters from the get-go. But at the same time, it's almost like, I think I'm probably about 20 hours in the game right now. And it's really only right now, maybe 20 hours in, that I find I need to pay any kind of attention at all to my items or which weapon I'm using or any of the other stuff that like usually would be quite crucial in a Monster Hunter. So for example, one of the highlights of any Monster Hunter up until this point has been the cafe or the restaurant. You would go to this restaurant, you would offer some monster parts that you have, the cat chef there. There are all these little they're creatures called felines. And you give them some food, they cook it. There's always like this amazing cutscene that goes on. It's like a big deal. You have the meal, like eating your meal before the battle was always like a big thing. And now it's like, it's actually hard to find it. Like it's buried a couple menus deep. Same thing for cooking meat. You need to eat meat during a battle to increase your stamina. So sometimes if there's a protracted battle that goes on for a long time, you get tired, you got to eat some meat and then get your stamina back up. Cooking the meat has always been like a trademark of Monster Hunter. Like the phrase "so tasty." Say that to anybody who plays Monster Hunter, and they know exactly what you're talking about. So tasty, like it's just the thing. It's like been a, literally a trademark, and now it's buried again. Like it's almost like you don't even know that it's even there. A lot of the systems in the past have been the focus of side quests. So, for example, in the past they would say, "Hey, we need you to do these side quests. One side quest is please catch 5 fish. One side quest is please harvest like 5 berries. One side quest is please, mine 5 pieces of ore." And people would always bitch and moan about it. But like usually they're just like in the very, very beginning of the game. And the purpose of those is to teach players those systems. You need the ore to build armor. You need the metal. You need to find out where the berries are because you need to use the berries to make potions. You need to catch the fish because you can use the fish bones to make bullets and that kind of thing. And so they kind of taught the system slowly. All that stuff is completely gone right now. I am on like hour 20. I don't think I've even done a single side quest. In fact, I'm trying to remember. I don't think there's even been one single side quest so far. These have all been like story quests. There are optional quests you can do, which just kind of recap fights you've already finished, but there's been no collect ore or kill 5 bugs or whatever. Not that are easily available and not that really teach you anything. If you don't go looking for those, you will never really see them. And so I feel like a lot of the stuff that has traditionally been kind of the supporting systems of Monster Hunter, the preparation, the making of items, the tweaking with stuff, it's like super buried, and they just really want you to just roll on fight after fight after fight. And it kind of, I feel like is kind of maybe taking a little bit too much away from what Monster Hunter is, because it's not necessarily a straight up action game now, but I feel like it's closer than it's ever been. And I don't know that that's necessarily a good thing. I think that maybe we're losing a little bit of what makes Monster Hunter. So I wouldn't mind. I mean, streamlining is great. And in fact, when I talked about Monster Hunter Rise a couple years ago, I think that was really like the apex of Capcom streamlining. There were still a lot of systems in there that you could dig your teeth into. There was still some stat tweaking to do. There was still some crafting and so forth and so on. But you still had a very fast-paced experience. And, you knew where the monster fights were if you wanted to, but you could also chill and do some other quests if you wished. And it was a pretty good balance. I think Rise had the formula just right for me. I think that was a great step forward. I think Wilds takes it too far. I think we're a little bit too far on the side of this is basically just an action game. And if you don't want to engage in the armor and weapon systems other than just crafting something that's stronger, you don't really have to. You don't really have to like cook your own meat. You don't really have to prepare your own items and stuff. Like the game kind of compensates for all that in various ways. And I think it just kind of strips a little bit too much out. So maybe that's just me, old school Monster Hunter guy talking, who's been in this series for a long time. I don't know. I just think that we don't need an action game. What we need is Monster Hunter. And I think it's funny because they still tutorialize like awful. I think tutorials have historically been one of Capcom's weakest aspects, especially with the Monster Hunter franchise. And I think they still get it wrong here. So even though they are trying so hard to streamline, it still doesn't quite work. I have to say also, I've been kind of disappointed in the mount that you get. We saw video earlier of this new animal that you could ride in Monster Hunter, and it seemed amazing. Kind of looked like a dinosaur with wings, maybe like a winged raptor kind of a thing. And in the video, it's like running, and then it's got wings, and it's flying and gliding, and you're like, oh man, that looks amazing. I wonder if I'm going to use this to like fight monsters and do all kinds of cool stuff. And it just isn't really that. It doesn't really fight in the battles. It'll come pick you up, and you can use it to carry some gear and stuff. But in general, they've kind of automated it where, I mean, you can drive it around or like make it walk around, but in many sections it goes on autopilot, because if you get to a series of chasms that need to be navigated, it'll just do it itself automatically. You're not really jumping or like platforming with it or anything, which was disappointing. You never really like use the animal to like jump off and glide on top of a monster to get the better of it. You know, it's kind of just getting you from point A to point B, which in one way is kind of nice, because if you don't know where you're going, all you got to do is push up, your dinosaur come gets you, and it takes you straight to the monster. But on the other hand, it's like, it's really passive. It's just, you're not really doing anything. It takes no skill to do that. You're not actively choosing to go one direction or another. I don't know. I feel like it's just maybe a little bit too much on autopilot, I guess. I don't know. I mean, I think there's just a lot in this game where I know what is here because I have played all the games. But if this was my first Monster Hunter getting into it, I would have no idea what a flash bomb was or what a paintball was. Oh my God, the worst example is I'm 20 hours in this game. Not even once have they asked me to use a trap or to build a trap or to get a monster to go into a trap. And trapping has always been such a huge part of Monster Hunter. Fight them until they're weak. You got to study their movements. You got to wait till they're limping. Once they're limping away, you throw a trap down. You got to bait them into the trap. And then once you get in the trap, you hit them with a tranquilizer. It's been like one of the hallmarks of the game, like a series defining aspect. And like, you don't ever have to do it if you don't want to. I wouldn't be surprised if most people didn't even know it was even a thing. They don't talk about it. They haven't mentioned it once in like the 20 hours I've been playing. Blows me away. So I think definitely... so final verdict is coming, right? I'll give this game a full review when I get a little further. I know that some people have already finished the campaign. Shout out to J Monster, who finished it like within 24 hours after getting the game. Blew me away. That guy, I mean, he's named J Monster for a reason, right? So props to you, my brother. But still working my way through it, and I just so I'm enjoying it, right? I like Monster Hunter in general. I'm playing with my wife and my son, having fun. I'm going to finish this for sure, because I finished all the Monster Hunters of recent years anyway. And I like it, but at the same time, I have to feel like this is catering a little bit too much. It's too streamlined. It's a little bit too non-essential with its supporting systems. It's kind of lost too much of the stuff that makes it stand out from other action games. It feels less strategic, less intentional. So I'm going to keep going, of course. I'll keep playing. Me and the wife are going to play some more after I get done with the podcast here. But so far, I feel like if you don't know anything about Monster Hunter at all, and you just want to kill big monsters, maybe play with your friends, I mean, this is certainly the easiest Monster Hunter to get into. Very low barrier to entry. You don't really have to know anything. They ask very little of you. All you have to do really is like push a couple buttons and go fight a monster, and then maybe make a sword once in a while. Like, it's pretty simple. And you can ignore most of the stuff that's in this game. So on the one hand, I appreciate they're trying to get more people in. But on the other hand, I feel like they're losing too much and they're stifling too much, which I bet some people would really find interesting. I think some people would really enjoy the armor mix and matching and the stat tweaking and some of those things. Like having a farm. In previous Monster Hunter games, you would have a little farm. And so you could plant things that you needed to use. And it kind of gave you the sense that you were harvesting parts and preparing for your battles. I mean, if some people didn't like that part because it was a pain in the ass, I mean, there's like a billion other action games to play, right? I think that having a little farm next to your tent in Monster Hunter, growing the things that will make a potion for you and then taking that potion out, and you can be proud that you made that stuff and you did a good battle because you prepared for it. That's really central to what Monster Hunter is about for me. And I feel like too much of that is gone right now. So this is not a review yet, just my early impressions after 20 hours. And I will report back again next week, I'm sure. But so far, certainly the most accessible and easy to get into, although I think the trade-off is it does not feel as rich or as well orchestrated or as nuanced as previous Monster Hunters have. So for me, maybe a loss perhaps, although for other people, maybe it's a gain. So the jury is still out, and I will report back once I get into the higher ranks, and we'll see how things play out in the post-credits high rank action stuff. So there's always a ton of content once you roll credits. There's always more to do. So I'm curious to see what that's like when I get there. All right, folks, the game portion of the show is officially done 4 days later, but like many humans, I do spend a few minutes a week in front of screens that don't have menus or life bars. That's right, it is time for the TV and movie roundup. Folks, we watched the entire series of Goosebumps The Vanishing with David Schwimmer, who was from the TV show Friends, and I've actually never seen Friends, never watched it. It never appealed to me, but I know that's where he's from because it was like impossible to not know that he was from that show. This is the second Goosebumps limited series. I think there's 8 episodes altogether. Pretty good. The cast wasn't as good as the first cast that we had last time. I think everybody in the cast started out as pretty unlikable, and I don't think that David Schwimmer is any great talent. I didn't have any nostalgia for him, and so I thought he was just like doing an okay job. But I thought the story was fine. It was creepy. It kept us coming back. We were curious to see what would happen. The ending didn't quite get there for us, but I think it was still a fun ride and worth watching. So I'm not going to spoil it, but if you want something slightly creepier that is also pretty family friendly and not like crazy scary, I think Goosebumps is pretty good. So that was Goosebumps The Vanishing. We just watched The Gorge on Amazon, which was a pretty neat movie. Interesting movie. Lots of different things in that movie. Basically, the story was there's this gorge in an undisclosed part of the world filled with all sorts of stuff we're not going to talk about. And 2 people have to go and stand guard over it. One person on each side of the gorge, and they're not supposed to talk to each other. One represents the East and one represents the West. Eastern Europe, really. Not like Asia East, but like Eastern Europe. And over the course of this movie, there's a woman on one side and a man on the other. They get to know each other and they communicate long distance through like written notes and binoculars and stuff like that. So it's kind of like a romance, or at least a rom-com, I guess. But then they do go into the gorge to see what's down there, and that becomes kind of like action/horror. And then there's like just general action. So it's kind of a weird hodgepodge of bits, kind of an actiony rom-com sort of horror thing. Whole bunch of elements put into blender and blended, but I think it worked. I thought it was pretty entertaining. I thought the special effects were pretty cool. Monsters were kind of gross. I dug it. Good action. So I thought it was, it's not something that is going to win an Academy Award, but I thought it was a great way to spend an afternoon, and I loved eating popcorn watching it, so I give it a thumbs up for sure. Good stuff. And the final thing is, in my continuing quest to watch all of the cartoons I did not get to finish as a kid from the 80s, I am starting Galaxy Rangers, or more properly, The Adventures of the Galaxy Rangers. Easily one of the best intro songs in all the 80s. That is this cool, like, hard rock intro that just kicks fucking ass. The opening sequence is really exciting. Just great stuff. That song has stayed with me for like my entire life. I can still hum it and sing it, no problem. And I finally got to hear the extended version, and the extended version was fucking awesome. So I think that theme song itself has a lot of power. But this cartoon is about 4 rangers in future space. They all have their own particular power, and they go to rescue people and solve crimes out on the extended space frontier, I guess, rather than the traditional Western frontier. It's like further west, keep going west. No, now you're off the planet, keep going. You're in the middle of space. That's how far west the frontier is now. It's great stuff. I think the animation is great. I think the stories are pretty cool. There's been a couple of action sequences that are pretty nice, and it's just a cut above what you normally got in the 80s. I think there's just a little bit more put into the writing. So I really like it a lot. Although I will say it's been problematic because I could only find it on Amazon, and they only had season 1. And when I actually bought it and looked into it, there are 65 episodes altogether, I believe. And you can only get 24 episodes, and they call that season 1. And I'm like, no. One whole season is 65 episodes, not 24. So not only do you not even have access to the full run of the show, the episodes you get in that 24 chunk are all in like random order. Like the first episode was correct, but then otherwise it was all like nothing made sense. I don't know how they chose these episodes, but it's just like a hodgepodge. And so that was really disappointing. I actually had to track down some DVDs, and those are coming in now. So I'll have to restart the series. And also I will have to buy a DVD player because I don't know how I'm supposed to watch DVDs these days. That hasn't really been a thing in my house for a while. So I'm going to have to buy a player, and then we'll just have to start fresh. Very disappointing to find something that is just impossible to stream. Kind of the same thing with Tiger Sharks from Rankin Bass. That's another one that's pretty high on my list to watch, and it is like nowhere. There's a handful of random episodes on YouTube, but like nothing in order, nothing complete. And I'm just having a devil of a time. So I had to find somebody who was perhaps working outside the confines of trademark law, shall we say, or copyright law, and they're going to send me an unmarked DVD so I can catch up with the series. So shout out to them for that. But yeah, it's just weird to like. There's so much available on streaming and online that it's strange to find something that is just not available fucking anywhere. Really strange. So anyway, all right, folks, that is a show. And don't forget, my son's review of his VR game is coming up after the closing music. So just heads up on that. But this is the main portion of the show here. Before we get to that, I would love for you to leave reviews, share the show on social media, and most important of all, please recommend the show to your friends because nothing beats word of mouth. And as always, I would love to get your questions and comments. We haven't done a question show in a while. Might have to do that coming up. You can email me directly, of course, SovatiGamesPodcast@gmail.com. You can also hit me up on social media. You can find me on Instagram and Blue Sky. It's my name, BradGallaway, all A's, no O's. You can also reach me in this Video Games Discord, which is totally free of charge. Just drop me a line and I will get you on board. And finally, if you'd like to support the show with the cost of running this podcast, you can do that over at patreon.com/the Soviet Games Podcast. If you appreciate what we do here, every single dollar helps and a euro helps that much more. Folks, that is going to do it for episode 430. I'm going to go collapse now. Thank you again for joining me here on the Soviet Games Podcast, and I'll see you next week, and stay tuned for my son. Here's the bonus that I told you about. This is a big week for guest stars. I know it's not the norm, but hey, why not, right? So to round out the show today, we have my returning guest and also my son, Whitaker. Whitty, how's it going?
Oh, fine. What about you?
It's going really well, sir. Thank you for joining me again.
Yeah, I'm here to talk about a VR game this time.
Yeah. I don't cover a lot of VR because it's not for me, but I know you're a bigger fan than I am. Will you please remind people listening what VR system you have?
I have the MetaQuest 2.
And how do you like it in general?
It's fine. It definitely runs out of battery quickly, but other than that, it's fun.
All right. I've seen you stumbling around the house and stuff and punching the dog wearing that thing. It seems like a lot of fun. So the game that we're talking about this week is called Beyond Blue. Do I have that right?
Yes.
All right. And from what I understand, this is a first-person, I don't know, what, swimming, underwater, fish poking? What do you do in this game?
I mean, basically the entire game is fish poking. This game actually sucks. It's a underwater, like, you play as like an underwater researcher. There's a lot of problems with it.
Well, hold on. Before we get to the problems, let's talk about what the game is supposed to be in general. I realize we poke fish, but like, what is the premise? Is there a story? Are you on an alien water world? Is it here on Earth? Like, just give us the basic before we get into criticism. What's it about?
You're just on Earth. I don't remember. I think you're supposed to be repairing an underwater base from last I remember from the story, but I didn't play for very long.
Okay, so your underwater base, first person, VR helmet, and then you get into it. I'm assuming. Well, I guess my first question is: do you have to swim with your hands? Like, are you using your VR controllers like you're actually swimming?
No. You have to use the stick to move, or you can aim your arms around. You have like propellers on your arms that you hold down a button to make you go.
Propellers on your arms? It sounds dangerous. Do they, like, if you move wrong, do they chop into your arms? Like, you have to be very careful?
No, they're in this little, like, enclosed space, but I looked inside the tube, and it's literally, there's nothing in there.
Oh, so it's just like the effect, like it's supposed to look like there's propellers, but there are actually no propellers inside there?
For some reason, they didn't add any propellers. I mean, maybe that's a later feature, but it was kind of funny to see nothing.
All right, well, details. Okay, so anyway, you're in this thing, you're swimming around underwater. So I guess before we get into the criticism, like, how does it look? I mean, I saw a screenshot. I mean, it looked pretty, idyllic underwater, blue and coral and stuff. I mean, as you're just looking around, gameplay aside, but just visually, did you feel like you were underwater? Was it convincing?
No. It looks fine on a screen, like in a screenshot, but it doesn't look very good underwater, or underwater, but in VR.
What was the problem basically with it in terms of graphics?
The textures felt very stretched over the surface, like not in a good way. Like it looked like you took one grain of sand and like stretched it out and put it on the surfaces.
Oh,
weird.
So like, was it kind of pixely when you got up close?
Yeah, it was like really blurry. Everything was really blurry. Even from far away, it didn't look very great.
All right, so maybe some texture problems, maybe not the best looking VR game out there. So, okay, getting to the gameplay, you kind of spoiled it already since you said it sucks, but give us a brief overview. Like, what was your main problems with it? Like, what did you not like about it?
The weird, like, strafing thing that you do instead of doing the propellers was, like, kind of janky.
Can you describe what it was?
Basically, you moved your stick around to move, like, back and forth, side to side, up and down, stuff like that. But the propellers was, like, your main propulsion, which you just moved your arm around to move yourself.
So you were kind of just, like, gliding through the water, like, and what was janky about it? What felt weird about it?
It just, like, the strafing, when you moved around to, like, get to an object, it felt like it moved in a weird direction. That might have just been because of the orientation of your head. When you're like looking around as opposed to just moving, because it kind of adapts to where you're looking at, which is not great.
All right, not sure I understand that, but that's okay. Maybe that's a VR thing. That's fine. But what were the other problems you had besides the weird movement?
Other than that, it was very fetch quest based, like with pretty much nothing else to it. I mean, I've played plenty of fetch quest like games, but this one felt excessively so.
All right, so like what? Like you start the game, you're underwater, and then like what do they just have you collecting 3 pieces of coral or something, or what do they want you to do?
You have to shoot fish with foam, and then you have to go in a straight line to like this base, and then you just have to shoot it with your welding tool, and then you move on and do another tool. It doesn't feel very interactive at all. Or well, it is, but not in like enough of an interact. Oh my god, you get what I mean.
Well, I'll cut that part out. Actually, I won't. So it sounds like what you're describing is maybe the beginning of the game was perhaps a little bit too on rails or handholdy, but is it perhaps that they were walking you through tutorials? I mean, is the rest of the game like that? I mean, do they eventually, maybe the formula changes once you get a little bit deeper in?
No, it gets worse. So they introduced this robot when you get stuck in a cave, and basically you can switch to him by clicking a button, and you control him like your other person. You have the propellers. But basically his whole thing is he can lift up heavy objects. And, oh my god, so he has the same 3 voice lines every time you pick up an object, which gets extremely irritating when you have to pick up like 15 rocks in a row.
What does he say?
I don't remember what the exact voice lines were, but...
Does he say like, "This is heavy, I'm tired of picking things up"? What does he say?
I mean, pretty much. It's just the same recycled voice lines that are pounding your eardrum while you're trying to pull the rocks away.
So repetitive voice lines. And if I recall correctly, you were telling me about this game earlier. There was another problem with the robot besides the overly repetitive voice lines, right?
Yeah, so they have no following mechanic for him. So instead of him following like somewhat close behind you, so then you can just switch to him real quick, you have to control him again to like swim him all the way over to where you were. So if you have to go like 5 miles to go to somewhere, and then you realize, oh, I need the robot, then you have to swim another 5 miles in the robot to get back there.
Oh, weird. So it doesn't track you. So you'd have to switch to the robot, and then are you looking through first person in the robot's view and just have to swim exactly the same path that you just went with your human person?
Yeah, you just have to swim again as the robot. It sucks.
That doesn't sound very good. All right, so it seems like it's got some problems. I mean, was there anything good about it, though? I mean, there must have been something. At least, like I challenge you. Personal challenge. Give me like one good thing about this game that perhaps these developers got right.
Nothing that comes to mind.
Nothing. Was there? There's got to be one thing. Something.
I would have said like if you could like use the terrain to move around by like grabbing onto it, but you can't even do that.
You can't interact with objects. Like you can't grab with your virtual hands or anything like that.
You can only grab like levers or like story-related objects. You can't grab onto the ground or anything else.
Okay, so it's not like a really immersive interactive. Like if you're on the ocean floor, you can't pick up sea urchin, you can't punch fish or whatever. You gotta just okay.
You can't even be goofy. You can't even like grab a fish and like throw it across the sea. Like you can't do anything. It's boring.
No physics shenanigans then.
Yeah, it's basically, if anything, it's like a VR novel. You just listen to dialogue that isn't even that great of a writing, and then pull one rock away and then swim again.
All right, well that doesn't sound like a very fleshed out or interactive experience. It seems like you had a pretty bad time with it, and I'm assuming you're not going to finish it. Overall, you don't need to give me a number or anything, but like, putting aside your own personal feelings for a second, Do you think that maybe perhaps somebody who was really like in love with the ocean, or maybe somebody who was a pretty avid VR gamer, like, is it possible that somebody else would get something out of this? Would you recommend it to anybody at all, or just a total hard no?
I would recommend it to nobody, but if there was by some astronomical chance that someone likes this, then I don't know what to say.
All right. Well, that sounds like a ring-in endorsement. My son definitely recommends it. Full price. He's giving it 3 stars.
Less than 3 stars.
All right, Whitty, thanks very much for popping on. Really appreciate it. And anything else you want to say to the listeners before we bail?
No, I think that's it.
All right, folks, that is it. That is the absolute end of the show. Thank you very much for listening, and we'll see you next week.